Of course, now crossing over to the very also pertinent discussion that is set to be right here on the table alongside Barack Odhuno, Chief Operations Officer, Aquavita, who will be taking us through the menace of single-use plastics, which is actually a discussion that is just not in the country, but across the globe. Just the other day, Canada is focused on implementing this ban on single-use of plastics. And of course, they are determined to ensure that this is an end game. And we certainly also expect this to be implemented across the globe. We've been talking about the ban of plastics for a long time right here. But then again, as time goes by, it's proving to be difficult to go ahead and ensure that we deal with this menace. And of course, we'll be having this candid discussion, just trying to understand what are other possible solutions that we can implement towards addressing this issue and this menace. When we look at statistics, we produce about 300 million tons of plastic each year, and of course half of it is disposable. That is alarming, so to speak. And worldwide, only 10 of about 13% of plastic items are recycled. And we've all known very well that we've been focusing on recycling, as one of the biggest ways of addressing this menace of plastics across the globe. So when we talk about stopping the use of plastics and we're talking about recycling as the key ways of dealing with this menace, then what does it mean in the event that they backfire on us? So I am not a specialist in this, but Barack Odhuno is a specialist. Thank you so much for finding time to be here with us this morning. He's the Chief Operations Officer, Aquavita, like I had said earlier on. And we're looking forward to hear of ways that we can actually implement as a country and how best the government has done this towards ensuring that we deal with the menace with plastic. Just the other day, the ban on plastic bags, and then boom, a year or so later, we still are not very successful in this, because then again, the new bags that were introduced into the market were equally considered to be very toxic in a way. So even as we come up and, sort of bring implementations that would sort of come in as a way to deal with this menace, we also need to be careful on how best we implement them and what kind of course, remedies that we're bringing aboard, and what will be the effect of these new remedies to the environment and to the people at large. So welcome aboard. Good to have you this morning. And straight to the question, how realizable is this, the talk of saying that we can actually come to that point where we'll sort of wipe off single use of plastics?
All right. So interesting question you put there. I think the only way that we can get to a point where we actually are having a positive impact in our attempt and in our goal towards reducing plastic is to, first of all, understand what really is the impact of plastic to the environment. I think it's almost impossible to define or to design ways and strategies of finding these solutions if we do not understand what the impact of plastic is on our environment.
Yes.
And really, the impact of plastic on our environment starts from the point of forming that plastic, from the point of manufacturing that plastic.
Right. And
the whole idea about understanding our environment as an ecosystem and not as an isolated issue. So if you look at plastic and how plastic is manufactured, in technical terms, plastic is essentially manufactured from what you call monomers. Essentially what you have out there is what you call PET plastic, which is basically polyethylene terephthalate.
Yes.
And this is formed from combining what you call ethylene glycol and you combine it with what you call terephthalic acid to then form what you call a polymer. Monomers themselves, in chemical terms, are compounds whose elements are bonded together by what you call van der Waals walls, which are essentially very weak, So that is what helps you to, form plastic in a very easy way.
Yes.
Now, that process releases a lot of carbon onto the environment. The environment as it is has a section that has what you call a balanced level of carbon footprint that protects and ensures that we are warm as we are on the Earth's surface. So there's a quantity that has to be in the environment. Now, if you input a lot more of that quantity, what you end up with is you have too much heat retained on the Earth's surface. And now those are the issues that now cause global warming.
Okay.
Yeah. So that process is, I think, the first process that we need to understand, and how plastic then comes into play. So from the moment you manufacture plastic, you're depositing a lot of carbon into the environment and increasing the carbon footprint in the environment, and then causing all these global warming issues. Now, then that plastic has to go through a value chain to get to whoever needs to use it. Whether it's in a water bottle, whether it's in a pen, like we have them in our workplaces, whichever way, that plastic
and while you might be championing against this, I mean, don't you think that at that particular time when there was that ban in the country, it was almost, you know, difficult? I would want to say that it's possible to actually survive without plastics.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going. Those are the details that now I want to give. So that plastic has to go through a value chain. And that value chain involves the use of vehicles, trucks, and these are burning fuel. So then you're also depositing more carbon onto the environment as you distribute, you know, this plastic. And then after that, it has to go through some usage, and then eventually it has to be disposed of. Gets broken, you know, so you have to dispose of it, which then you have to say, okay, either I'll just throw it away or I'll take it through a recycling process. When you take it through a recycling process, you're still going to form other plastics.
Oops, okay.
And then dumping more carbon into the environment. So I think that understanding is critical. But I think it's also fair to state that it is not very easy to completely get rid of plastic. So to some extent, we must have some plastic.
Yeah, so we need less plastic.
Yeah, so we need less plastic.
Yeah.
So the idea now is to manage. So that we make sure that as much as possible, we look at our activities and the things that we do, and we identify areas where it is actually possible to completely do away with plastic. And then only, you know, use them, you know, in areas where we do not have, you know, a means to not use plastic.
If we're to pick up from our bigger brothers, EGO at some point in time has gone ahead to pull this, and now the latest, Canada, actually, it's news that is making headlines as it stands today. And of course, there's that argument on ground as to whether this is indeed realistic. And like you rightfully put it, maybe at some point in time, it might not be 100% realistic. So how possible, of course, would a prohibition of these sort of bring or address the issue of plastic litter, and most importantly, the menace that is within us at this particular point, to a point whereby it will be at least fair for the people?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that it's then important to identify which areas can we take out plastic and which areas do we then manage so that it is taken through a recycling process that does not have a negative impact, you know, throughout the ecosystem. And I think there are several ways. Single-use plastic, for example, is one of the ways in which, you know, you can do that. And, you know, you go to several countries now, you have you have options where you have water purification systems set up at strategic locations, and then people then use, you know, multiple use bottles, so that then you're not producing as much plastic, you know, for the people. So those are ways that you can, and I think that it's very important that we you know, strategically embrace, you know, all these new innovations that are helping us to reduce on the plastic. But ultimately, it's important that first we understand the impact. Now, what I explained earlier was basically just on the environment. What about what gets disposed of to our seas, to our oceans, to our rivers? Even worse. You should look at the environmental impact that was done on our seas in the UK. There's a lady called Natalie Fee that has done some interesting work and actually shown how birds are actually just falling off and dying in the seas because of
the,
consuming the little plastics.
Water,
water
and the foods and all that. Of course, this sort of dangers will always
you
fry.
look at our marine life, the fish, it ends up choking the whole ecosystem, you know, in our marine life and in our marine system. So
why are we not very much successful in this battle? Because you know, as the statistics equally show, is that in 2050, I mean, we'll be talking of a different story, and not just a different story, but a negative story in terms of, you know, the damage that has been caused by plastics in our very own environment. And every other time, you know, we're having global conferences to address this, to sort of just to see how best we can actually manage to face off the use of plastic, or better yet, just reduce the use of plastics to a certain level that will be good enough for the environment. Why is it that we're not successful in this battle? Because if you're looking at the energy that has been channeled towards this, and the resources that have been channeled towards this, and the education that has been impacted and, you know, sort of given to our people, why is it that it's becoming and it's proving to be hard?
So I think that the energy that you're talking about has not been structured and has not been pointed to the right direction. You walk around here, you move across to our companies, and you will actually realize that many people are not aware about the real impact of plastic. And I think it's really an awareness issue, and it's an issue of linking that awareness to sustainability and to responsibility. I think that is what is critical, because the way we are moving now is not sustainable. You have issues of climate change. I think we experience that even here in Kenya, where the rains are not coming when they're supposed to come, and all this can really be linked to global warming, change in climate patterns, and these are partially caused by plastics.
All right. Yeah. Well, when we're talking about the ban, just allow me to ask this question. Of course, we would argue this, you know, when we're talking about facing off the single hand, you know, use of plastic in some point in time. We can say that this can be replaced without disrupting day-to-day life, because that's what we're worried about. You know, the common mwananchi would want to know, am I going to be comfortable at the end of the day? And that comfort, for as long as you're facing it off and you're bringing something that is good enough, they would probably not have an issue, sort of letting go of the use of plastic. But do we have really, you've mentioned some, but you know, affordable, effective alternatives, and what are the possible impact? Of course, for instance, what I talked about, the current bags that were brought aboard, we all embraced them, and we all said it's okay. This is the direction that we're going to take. It's an alternative to the usual plastic bags that we're used to from Mama Boga and all that, which is not 100%, you know, phased off. So, as we embrace some of these new things, then what would be the possible effects of them, of course, to the environment and equally to the people?
So I think to address that question, we would first of all need to ask, when we talk about single-use plastic, where are we using them in our lives?
In our lives, yes.
So I think that is the first thing. So I think you talk about drinking water, for example. If you were to, you get into a supermarket, you're thirsty, you need some water and so on. I'd like to take us back a few generations, maybe a few years ago. Governments were running serious campaigns to the whole populace and saying, you can actually drink your tap water. The only thing you need to do is to boil it. So I mean, some of these are actually things that we can easily do.
Okay.
You don't need to go to your supermarket and buy a bottle of water from the shelf. You can simply have your water from the tap given by the city council. All you need to do is to boil that water, make sure it cools down, and then put it in your reusable bottle. Because the menace here is that you buy that small bottle, you get rid of it. You buy another small bottle, you get rid of it. So one of the ways you can do is just get a reusable bottle. It's actually, city council water, by the way, is pre-treated water.
Yes.
So that's another understanding that people need to have. So for me, it's really an awareness. What are the issues that people struggle with, and what solutions can we provide to those issues that people struggle with? For me, that is where the issue is. And awareness campaigns directed towards educating the masses and teaching them that, you know, these are the ways that you can work around this.
Okay, let's talk about...
You talk about plastic bags,
yes.
For example. Every single country around the world that is serious about climate change is now completely banning plastic bags.
Yeah.
Every single country that is serious about climate change and protecting marine life and protecting the environment is banning plastic bags. And really, when it comes to plastic bags, it's not that there is no solution.
Yeah.
There are so many solutions that we can use. And I think we should just go ahead and use those solutions.